In my previous life, on the day I married General Xiao Heng, my half-sister, when Liana knelt before me in public and begged, "Sister, you forced me to serve the general back then, and now I am carrying his child. Liana does not seek status. I only beg you to be merciful and allow me to enter the household with you. Sister, the child is innocent. If you refuse, you are forcing Liana to take her own life. The claim that I forced her to try on the wedding dress is completely unfounded." I did not agree to Liana's request. Xiao Heng also did not question it, however. When Liana hired bandits to intercept my wedding procession halfway and swap the brides, but she ended up being raped and killed by the bandits who acted on a sudden impulse. After Liana's death, her biological mother, concubine Zheng, accused my mother of driving her stepdaughter to her death. My father, favoring the concubine, had my mother publicly beaten with a paddle and then confined to a manor. Ignoring how concubine Zheng tormented my mother, which ultimately led to my mother's tragic death, at that time, I had just become pregnant and begged my husband to help me seek justice for my mother. Yet Xiao Heng, who had always been gentle with me, had the servants beat the child out of my womb right before my mother's spirit. If you had agreed to let Liana into the household back then, she and the child wouldn't have died. When Qingyang, you brought this upon yourself. It was only then that I realized Xiao Heng had long been secretly involved with Liana. Before my mother's coffin, I and the unborn child in my womb became two lives lost in one body. When I opened my eyes again, the joyful firecrackers outside the door were deafening, and I was clad in a blood-red wedding dress. Before me knelt Liana, begging me publicly at my feet, "Sister, that day you suspected the general of having an affair outside and forced me to test the wedding. Now that I am carrying the general's child, if sister does not agree to let Liana enter the household, Liana would have no face left to live. I can only dash myself to death right in front of sister's wedding sedan, just like in my previous life, when Liana rushed out right as I was about to leave, spouting nonsense. Liana does not seek any status. Even being a maid-serving sister and the general would satisfy me completely. Although my father, Wen Shuren, was only a third-rank official, he held the lucrative position of Salt Commissioner, and most officials in the capital showed him some respect. In addition, I was about to marry into a general's family today, so there were many guests at home. At this moment, everyone was drawn to this sudden commotion. When Liana had inherited her mother, concubine Zheng's, theatrical talent, and when she cried, it was as pitiful as pear blossoms falling in the rain. Father frowned and glared at me angrily. "Wen Qingyang, how dare you use your status as the legitimate daughter to force your sister to test the marriage for you? Usually, you and your mother bully Liana and her mother. Your aunt endures it herself and even advises me to prioritize family harmony and not hold it against you. I never expected that my tolerance would only encourage you to commit such an evil deed. Is this how your mother usually teaches you?" As she spoke, she cast a disgusted glance at my mother. A daughter's lack of discipline is the mother's fault. All you have in your belly are petty schemes, utterly unworthy of any decent occasion. One sentence sparked lively discussions among the guests. I heard that Lord Wen's legal wife, Lady Zhong, comes from a merchant background. How can a woman who hasn't even read the classic for women manage a household properly? She spoils her own daughter while mistreating the concubine's daughter. She has none of the dignity befitting a legal wife and matriarch. My mother indeed comes from a merchant background, but if she hadn't funded my father's imperial examinations and paved his way with real silver for over 20 years, where would the Wen family be today? I know she has long been estranged from my father, who favors his concubine over his wife, and has endured it all only for the sake of my upcoming marriage. In my previous life, my mother couldn't bear to see me being coerced on my wedding day and openly rebuked Aunt Zheng and her daughter. Afterward, she was accused of being jealous of the concubine and mistreating the illegitimate daughter, and was even publicly caned by my father before being sent away to a manor. Aunt Zheng used snakes, insects, rats, and ants to gnaw at my mother's wounds every day, tormenting her to death. The horrific scene is still vivid before my eyes. Meeting again in this life, I struggled to hold back the tears in my eyes. I grabbed my mother's hand to stop her from stepping forward, signaling her to stay calm. I stepped forward and spoke steadily. "If my sister wishes to enter the household with me to serve the prince, Why didn't she mention it earlier to our father and mother? Even if my sister hasn't come to this courtyard to pay respects to mother for a long time, and it's inappropriate to speak with mother about it, how could she even hide it from father, who stays in the concubine's separate courtyard every day, to cause such a scene publicly on the very day of my wedding? Those who don't know might think my sister is deliberately trying to ruin the Wen family's reputation. I only meant for us to enter the general's residence together. I never said it wasn't allowed. Who is my sister putting on this life and death act for? It's simply unbecoming of our Wen family's dignity. My father, though not of high birth, valued reputation above all else. Unlike the sudden, unprepared confrontation in my previous life that made us a laughingstock, I spoke a few words with neither humility nor arrogance, allowing everyone to understand the underlying truth. To allow a concubine's daughter to be raised in the mistress's chambers, this principal wife is indeed magnanimous. Didn't you just hear? Lord Wen also stays in the concubine's chamber every night. In that case, the few times I've seen Lord Wen at banquets, he always seems to bring this same concubine. Could it be that he favors the concubine over his wife, on her wedding day, being threatened by her half-sister and scolded by her father? Yet the eldest Miss Wen shows not a hint of grievance. She doesn't seem like a difficult person. It's the half-sister who's acting improperly. Amid the discussions, father's expression grew increasingly stiff. In my previous life, concerned about keeping family scandals private, my mother and I found it hard to speak out, and instead, they used public opinion to label us as jealous. Now, I have publicly torn off the Wen family's fig leaf. After all, in this lifetime, I have no intention of keeping the Wen family. I looked calmly at Wen Liana. If my sister wants to enter the general's manor, she can simply marry alongside me. Hearing this, Aunt Zheng behind my father thought I had relented, and said with a laugh, "That's more like it. Although the young lady wronged my Liana first, she has now come to her senses. After Liana enters the household, you two shall still address each other as sisters, with no distinction between legitimate and illegitimate, no hierarchy of seniority. Rely on each other, and your father and I will be at ease." Wen Liana also showed a joyful expression, but before her rising smile could settle, she heard me continue. "She may enter the household, but as for her status, as you yourself said, sister, become a chambermaid. Once you become a chambermaid, you won't even be considered a concubine's daughter anymore. Your status will be the same as that of a servant, and whether you're beaten or sold will be entirely up to the mistress." With that, I didn't give them a chance to react and immediately ordered my attendants. "Miss Liana is with child and cannot ride a horse, and according to etiquette, a concubine is not allowed to ride in a sedan chair. Hire a donkey cart to send Miss Liana to the side gate of the general's manor first." The streets were already packed with commoners waiting to see the excitement of the general's manor's grand wedding. I deliberately used an uncovered donkey cart to have Wen Liana paraded through the streets to the side gate. Within half an hour, the commoners would spread her status as a concubine throughout the entire city. When Liana's face turned pale, "Why should I be the one to serve as a maid in the household, Wen Qingyang? We are both our father's daughters. Why do you get to marry into the general's mansion while I have to serve as a maid?" Wen Liana has been spoiled by Aunt Zheng since she was young, and I always knew she couldn't bear such humiliation. He will surely reveal his true colors. I let out a cold laugh. "Didn't you say it yourself, sister? You don't care about status. Could it be that you only said it to gain sympathy?" I said as I gently squeezed mother's hand. Mother immediately understood and assumed her role as the mistress of the house, as a concubine-born daughter. "You dare cause a scene at the legitimate daughter's wedding. For this alone, you could be beaten to death. Qingyang has been magnanimous enough to indulge your demands, yet you still don't know when to be satisfied. There is a distinction between legitimate and illegitimate children. It is the natural order of human relations, the rules set by our ancestors. Even if the master dotes on you, he will not break the rules for you. In my previous life, my mother anxiously defended me, bluntly saying that my father was biased. But now, my mother cleverly used the ancestral human relations to silence my father. Mother and daughter were of one mind, immediately intending to gag Wen Liana and take her away. In her panic to avoid being caught, when Liana actually rushed out the door, she collided head-on with the wedding procession. and a horse whinnied as it was reined in. With her face covered in tears and snot, she clung tightly to Xiao Heng's leg. "General, save me." Wen Qingyang forced me to be his concubine, in front of the commoners on the street. When Liana appeared even more pitiful than she had in the mansion, it was the same old story, but it stirred the sympathy of every bystander on the street. When we came out, the people were already cursing me and my mother. Unlike in the previous life, Xiao Si's face was not smiling. Instead, he frowned as he dismounted. Looking at me with disgust, he said sharply, "Wen Qingyang, you drugged me with an aphrodisiac and forced Liana to come here for the wedding trial. Now that Liana is pregnant, and you still force her to be a concubine, how could there be such a vicious woman like you in the world? In my previous life, my mother died tragically." Xiao Heng coaxed me, saying he would seek justice with me, but at my mother's memorial, he had me and the unborn child in my womb beaten to death with clubs. At the moment of my death, he looked at me just like this. "I agreed to consider marriage with you back then because I thought you had once saved my life. Who would have known that you falsely claimed credit and stole the glory that belonged to Liana? Not content with stealing Liana's rightful position as the principal wife, you even caused the death of Liana and her child. Today, I will let your mother's spirit witness how you pay with your life." I met Xiao Heng because I once saved his life, a year ago. A plague broke out in the borderlands. Having studied medicine since childhood, I went there to treat the sick and save lives. And by chance, I saved Xiao Heng, who had fallen ill while leading his troops in battle. I admired him for defending the nation at the frontier, and despite the risk of fatal infection, I cared for him day and night for 3 days without even changing my clothes. At the time, I wore a face veil. So he never saw my face and only knew that I was the young lady of the Xiao residence. The first thing Xiao Heng did upon returning to the capital was to ask for my hand in marriage. Yet for some reason, he now believes it was Wen Liana who saved him. Now he stands shielding Wen Liana behind him. "The one I intended to marry was always Liana. You stole Liana's credit for saving people, and now you're pushing your luck by forcing her to become a concubine. If you insist on this, then I, the general, cannot marry you, the legitimate daughter." It seems Xiao Heng has also been reborn. In my previous life, I adamantly refused to let Wen Liana enter the household, but Xiao Heng, knowing there would be bandits disrupting the marriage, didn't say much. But now that he knows the bandits will harm his precious Liana, he naturally has to fight fiercely for his beloved. Today, either you and Liana enter the general's mansion together, or I will only marry Liana alone. But by then, the entire capital will know that you are a jealous woman who covets merit and forces her half-sister to test the marriage. No one will dare to propose to you anymore. This was a change that had never occurred in her previous life. Father, Aunt Zheng, and Wen Liana, each with their own hidden agendas, watched as I was driven to a dead end. Mother, not knowing how to defend me, was so anxious that her eyes filled with tears. "You. How could all of you gang up to bully my Qingyang like this? You can't wrong my child like this." But who would believe it? Yet the clamor of the masses can crush a person to death, and I must also strive to clear the names of myself and my mother. I took a deep breath. The general wishes to marry my half-sister. Wen Qingyang dares not stand in the way. Some things still need to be made clear. Wen Liana, you keep saying I forced you to try on the wedding dress. Do you have any witnesses? Wen Liana hid behind Xiao Heng, looking utterly pitiful. "Of course my sister wouldn't let others know about such an embarrassing matter. Now you're demanding a witness. Are you trying to force my sister to die?" I curled my lips, my tone indifferent. "No, you do have one. The fetus in your womb is the witness. You claim to be pregnant, but would you dare to have a doctor verify it with just your word?" Xiao Heng was about to stop her, but when Liana had already foolishly agreed, before she could change her mind, I declared clearly, to ensure fairness, we'll randomly select a doctor from a street-side pharmacy. I know that watching the excitement is human nature, and once the matter is laid out in the open, it won't allow Xiao Heng to silence everyone again. Among the onlookers, there were some busybodies who invited 4 or 5 doctors in a row. After repeated diagnoses, they all confidently declared, "She is indeed pregnant, and it's been almost 2 months." When Liana couldn't see Xiao Heng's furrowed brows, she just looked at me triumphantly. "What else do you have to say, sister?" But then she saw the corner of my mouth curl up as I whispered, "When Liana, thank you for lending the child in your womb to prove my innocence." With that, I took out the marriage certificate and presented it publicly. The general gave me the marriage proposal a month ago, but when Liana's child is already nearly 2 months along, at that time, the marriage proposal had not been made and the engagement was not yet settled. So how can you speak of a trial marriage, since the two of you have long had feelings for each other? Marriage between a man and a woman is a common matter. Why go through all this trouble and drag an innocent person like me into it? I threw the marriage certificate in front of Xiao Heng. Wen Qingyang, would rather never marry in this lifetime than be coerced by anyone. Our engagement is hereby cancelled. That day, I tossed down the marriage certificate, took my mother's hand, and left immediately. I didn't return to the Wen residence, but instead went to the villa in the capital that is under my mother's name. In this lifetime, I will never give Wen Shuren and concubine Zheng the chance to harm my mother again. My mother was full of confusion, having not experienced the previous life. I didn't know how to explain past and present lives to her, so I told her everything as if it were a dream. I thought I would need to persuade her further, but unexpectedly, she immediately embraced me in her arms. My Qingyang, you've suffered so much. Even if by some chance it turns out as in your dream, I would not rest in peace even if I turned into a vengeful ghost to claim your life. But today you have offended your father and the Xiao family. I fear that, as they said, no man in the capital will dare to propose to you anymore. To be able to lean into my mother's embrace again in this new life, I am already content, but the ones who committed evil are Xiao Heng and Wen Liana. Why should I be the one who doesn't get to marry? Xiao Heng must have thought I was deeply in love with him. Mother, I know someone who would definitely be willing to marry me. I whispered a few words into Mother's ear. Mother frowned and said, how could it be him? I stopped my mother from asking further questions and only urged her to rest for a few days to regain her strength. Certainly, the Wen family and the Xiao family will not have peace in the coming days. Just as I expected, first, when Liana did not get her wish to marry into the Xiao family that day, Xiao Heng was deeply loyal and righteous. But although he was the legitimate son of the general's household, the several illegitimate sons under the old general were all eyeing his position covetously. Moreover, the old general was aging, and the power and influence of the general's household had greatly declined compared to before. Xiao Heng's mother, being a princess, was also arrogant and looked down on others. In my previous life, my mother prepared dowries that filled several streets to be carried to the general's mansion. Yet she still looked displeased and found fault with me everywhere after marriage, putting on the airs of a mother-in-law. Now, her own precious only son actually wants to marry a daughter of a concubine, and there isn't even a generous dowry. Lady Xiao was the first to object, forcing my father to give an explanation. Either both daughters marry together, with the dowry doubled, leave none alive. Xiao's mother refused to let Wen Liana enter the household. And when Liana was sent back to the Wen family, to appease her, Xiao Heng spread the story throughout the city that I had stolen her credit for saving his life. Liana, don't worry, even if my mother doesn't agree, I will use my military achievements to obtain an imperial decree to marry you. Xiao Heng sent someone to deliver a message to me. Prepare a double dowry in 7 days. Wen Qingyang, this is the final chance I'm giving you. Meanwhile, my father, unable to withstand the constant pestering from Aunt Zheng, first attempted to send people to forcibly take me and my mother away. However, my mother owns numerous properties in the capital, some of which even my father is unaware of. Later, my father grew furious and declared that if my mother still refused to bring me back, he would definitely divorce her. By then, I'll see how you, a divorced woman and a jilted bride, manage to scrape by. I comforted my mother. Mother, just as you don't want me to jump into a pit of fire, your daughter also doesn't want to see you waste the rest of your life for my sake. A man like Wen Shuren, who dotes on his concubine and neglects his wife, isn't worth you sacrificing your entire life. Mother nodded. How could she not know? But such is the world. Life is difficult for women. Both my maternal grandparents had passed away. If it were truly just my mother and me, her wealth alone would be enough to attract the covetous eyes of villains. I just feel sorry for you. 3 days from now is your birthday banquet. Even for children from ordinary families, Birthdays should be celebrated properly. But now, with all the commotion, even if we were to host a citywide feast, I'm afraid few would come. Mother looked full of worry, but I was not concerned at all. Mother, we really should host a grand banquet. I want to invite a distinguished guest. Breaking from my low profile of the previous days, I instructed the steward to hire a few gossipy women to spread the word along the streets. In just 3 days, nearly the entire city knew that I, Wen Qingyang, was going to hold a birthday celebration banquet. Holding my mother's restless hand, I secretly made a resolution. In this life, I will not only change my own fate but also rescue my mother from suffering. On my birthday, I took my mother to the door early to wait. The people along the street craned their necks to watch. Look, that's the rebellious daughter of the Wen family. She stole her half-sister's credit to climb the social ladder, got exposed, and still shamelessly broke off the engagement in public to save face. Now she's stubbornly throwing herself a banquet. Does she really expect people to attend out of respect for the Xiao and Wen families? I bet she's using this as an excuse to get General Xiao to come see her, just to find a way to save face. Even the butler at my mother's house, seeing the wide-open door and the empty front yard, couldn't help but feel uneasy. Miss, should I tell the kitchen to prepare fewer tables of food? As soon as the butler finished speaking, several carriages rumbled to a stop in front of the mansion. Recognizing the emblems on the carriages, my mother nervously grabbed my hand. It's the Wen family. The first to come down were Wen Shuren and Aunt Zheng. Aunt Zheng was adorned with a dazzling array of jewels, her meticulous attire making her appear even more elegant than my own mother. Especially that golden floral hairpin on her head. Yesterday I had sent someone back to the Wen residence to fetch it, intending to give it to my mother today, but Aunt Zheng stopped me and, in front of the servants, called my mother by her name directly. Zhong Rujin hasn't even been divorced by the master yet, and she's already trying to sneak the family's wealth out. Could it be that she has a lover on the outside supporting her, now standing beside Wen Shuren? She puts on the airs of a proper wife, curling her lips and speaking to me with sarcasm. I say, young lady, did you think someone would actually attend your banquet after leaving the master, making such a big fuss? You couldn't possibly believe that those noble ladies from the capital who used to be friendly with you were doing so out of respect for your face. Wen Qingyang, Wen Shuren is accustomed to frowning at me and my mother. Nonsense. 2 women actually dare to imitate others by hosting a banquet. Simply disgraceful. A pair of bull-like eyes glared at my mother. Hurry up and take this rebellious daughter home. As the matriarch of the Wen family, how can you, instead of preparing dowries for your 2 daughters at home for such an important event as their marriage, be here slacking off and avoiding your duties? I think you've had enough of being the legitimate wife. After the daughters are married, you will immediately hand over the household keys to Channa and get out of the mansion, go to the estate and stop being an eyesore here. Aunt Zheng quickly added, I don't mind working a bit harder, but after all these years, I have no idea how you've been managing the household. When I took stock of the storeroom yesterday, I found there's hardly any money left in the estate. Now that both young ladies are to be married, preparing double dowries is truly a strain. Liana is with child, and once she enters the household, she will naturally be honored as the mistress due to her son. For the sake of our Wen family's reputation, I have no choice but to give Qingyan's dowry to Liana first. But don't worry, sister, I still have some savings of my own. With 20 taels of silver, we can send our eldest daughter off in grand style. When Shuren wanted my mother to hand over the household management authority to Aunt Zheng, but mother was not angry. However, when she heard that Aunt Zheng was eyeing my dowry, mother trembled with rage all over. My daughter's dowry was prepared by me, her mother. That is the wealth of my Zhong family. Why should it be given to your daughter? She glared at the 2 of them with hatred in her eyes. When Shuren, I married you when I was 16, at that time, you were just a scholar. It was my Zhong family who supported your studies and helped you with the imperial examinations. I have worked diligently in the Wen family for 20 years, but how have you treated me? Mother pointed at Aunt Zheng. That year, when I was pregnant with Qingyang, within just half a year you brought home a pregnant opera singer. For my daughter, I'll swallow my pride and endure the pain. You may favor your concubine over your lawful wife. Heaven will judge you for that, and I won't argue with you. If you want this actress to manage the household, I won't interfere. But if you dare try to take my daughter's dowry, absolutely not." Before Mother could finish speaking, another carriage arrived. When Liana stepped down from the Xiao family's carriage and stood in front of her own mother, "Madam, if you're angry, direct it at me. Don't bully my mother." Xiao Heng behind her seemed to be her confidence, speaking loudly to my mother, "Lady Zhong, I advise you to watch your words and actions. After I marry Liana, her mother will naturally be my mother-in-law. In the future, when Liana gives birth to my legitimate heir, and I achieve military merits, I will naturally request honors from the emperor for her and my mother-in-law. As for you, coming from a merchant background, how did you raise such a malicious daughter? If I were Lord Wen, I would have written a letter of divorce long ago and kicked you out of the Wen family." I stood in front of my mother, looking directly at Xiao Heng and his group. "Today is my birthday. And I never sent you any invitations, Xiao Heng. As someone who knows you, I advise you to leave right now." Xiao Heng looked down at me with a contemptuous tilt of his chin. "Wen Qingyang, you deliberately spread the news all over the city, wasn't it, just to make me come? Even now, you're still stubbornly refusing to admit the truth. Today I want to see who else, besides us, would be so blind as to attend your banquet." As Xiao Heng's voice fell, a woman's voice full of confidence spoke up. "Wen Qingyan's banquet I'll attend." The crowd still wanted to crane their necks to see, but all they saw was a flash of bright yellow. "Her Majesty the Queen has arrived." Overjoyed, I quickly pulled my mother down to kneel. Amidst the crowd uniformly dropping to their knees, the Queen took me by the hand to rise, then helped my mother up with both hands. "Rujin, today is a family banquet. There is no need for formalities between us." The Empress looked at me with appreciation in her eyes. "It has been many years since we last met, and Yang has grown so much." I performed another curtsy. Qingyang pays respects to the Empress aunt. Seeing the Empress and I being so intimate, Auntie Zheng, kneeling to the side, was green with envy. She had the audacity to crawl forward a few steps on her knees. "Your Majesty, the Empress has arrived. I failed to welcome you properly and have been neglectful. I've been neglectful." When Aunt Zheng was an actress, she relied on her sweet talk to navigate social situations smoothly. Later, after marrying Wen Shuren as a concubine, she was exceptionally favored. When attending banquets, others would address her as Madam Wen. A frog at the bottom of a well thinks the sky is only as big as the opening above. She actually thought the Empress was attending the banquet to show face to the Wen family, a mere girl's birthday. And to think Her Majesty the Queen would trouble herself to remember it. It must be that His Majesty, appreciating my husband's daily diligence and knowing my daughter is to marry into the general's household, sent Her Majesty the Queen to offer congratulations. "But, Your Majesty, this girl Qingyang is stubborn and lacks propriety. Do not let her offend you." Auntie Jing spoke and actually made to stand up, disregarding Wen Shuren's expression of extreme urgency, pulling Wen Liana forward. "This is our Liana, the future mistress of the general's mansion. She will often come to the palace to pay her respects to you in the future. Liana, why don't you quickly greet Her Majesty the Empress?" When Liana inherited both Zheng concubine's talent for acting and her foolishness, seeing the Queen holding my hand, she also wanted to compete for superiority in front of everyone. She put on a smile and deliberately spoke in an innocent tone. "Liana also greets Auntie Queen." Before the word peace could be uttered, her face was already struck hard by a eunuch's slap. "How dare you? What kind of person are you? How dare you claim kinship with Her Majesty the Empress?" When Liana, who had never been touched by a single finger since childhood, covered her face and immediately shed tears of grievance. She was immediately slapped several more times. "These slaps are a gift from Her Majesty. How dare you cry? Do you think Her Majesty has wronged you?" When Liana wanted to argue further, but was immediately silenced by Xiao Heng, who covered her mouth and pulled her to kneel properly by his side. "Your servant Xiao Heng, on behalf of his wife, thanks Her Majesty the Empress for her guidance." Aunt Zheng didn't understand the situation and thought that the Empress was unaware of her and her daughter's identities. "Your Majesty must have misunderstood. Didn't Your Majesty come to attend the banquet hosted by my Wen family? Both Liana and I are members of the Wen family." Before she could finish speaking, she was also grabbed by those on either side and slapped several times, in the presence of Her Highness, Who gave you permission to speak without authorization? Seeing that Aunt Zheng still wanted to speak, Wen Shuren quickly slapped her across the face. In the presence of Her Highness, how dare a mere concubine like you speak? At this moment, the Empress finally let out a cold snort. So Lord Wen still remembers that she is merely a concubine. I thought Lord Wen had already divorced his lawful wife and elevated this actress to the position of the principal wife. In front of the crowd, the Empress declared loudly, "Today I have truly come to attend a family banquet. However, it is not the Wen family banquet. I am here for the feast of my sworn sister Zhong Rujin." The Empress held my mother's hand. If Qingyang hadn't sent word to me, how much longer would you, foolish one, have kept enduring on your own? When the Queen was young, she loved traveling through mountains and rivers, and by chance, she met my mother and became close friends. When I was young, I often went with my mother to visit the Queen in her palace, but later, because my mother was unwilling to let the Queen be troubled by my father's official affairs, we gradually reduced our visits. She only told my father that she had fallen out of favor with the Queen. However, in my previous life, after my mother and I passed away one after another, the Queen ordered a secret investigation. Unfortunately, there was no direct evidence, so she couldn't clear our names. So after being reborn, I immediately took the jade pendant bestowed by Her Majesty the Empress and rushed to the palace overnight to request an audience. When Liana and Aunt Zheng thought they had the support of the Xiao and Wen families, but in the end, the world belongs to the imperial family. Urged by Wen Shuren, Aunt Zheng quickly kowtowed and admitted her guilt. "Your Majesty, please forgive me. Your Majesty doesn't know that my sister has a lazy nature and isn't good at managing household affairs. I've grown accustomed to sharing the burden for the mistress, which is why I momentarily overstepped my bounds. At this point, you still want to step on us, mother and daughter." The Empress looked at the golden hairpin in her hair. "You, a mere concubine, have taken on so much hardship that you've even taken the golden hairpin I gave to Rujin for yourself. I deliberately had someone fetch the golden hairpin just for this moment. Give Her Majesty the Queen a reason to act out." The eunuch yanked the golden hairpin out, even loosening Aunt Zheng's bun in the process. Tears welled up in Aunt Zheng's eyes as she intended to put on a pitiful display in front of everyone. But before she could even draw a breath, the eunuch raised his hand to slap her, and she quickly swallowed her act in fear. The Queen looked down condescendingly at Wen Shuren, who was kneeling on the ground trembling. "I heard that Lord Wen has been bringing this concubine to all the banquets he attends. Favoring a concubine at the expense of the wife. If this reaches His Majesty, I fear even Lord Wen's official career will be affected." Wen Shuren immediately kowtowed repeatedly. "Your Majesty is absolutely right. This humble official was momentarily blinded by that wretched concubine and treated Rujin unfairly. I will bring my wife home at once and ensure we treat each other with the utmost respect from now on." Lifting her face, her eyes were filled with pleading. "Rujin, we've been husband and wife for half a lifetime. What could possibly be so irreconcilable? Besides, Qingyang hasn't even entered the general's mansion yet. If her parents are at odds, she will also be looked down upon by her in-laws. Rujin, please come home with your husband." I immediately spoke out loud. If my marriage requires my mother to endure humiliation for the rest of her life, then Qingyang would rather never marry and stay by my mother's side. The Empress showed an approving look in her eyes, and my mother also felt strength from the hand I was holding. Yes, if I endure humiliation, it will only make Qingyang think that this is how a married couple should be. I don't want her to be like me, enduring again and again and wasting this life. Wen Shuren, I want a divorce from you. With the Empress presiding over the matter, Wen Shuren knew he was in the wrong and didn't dare to argue further. I could only write the divorce agreement on the spot. When the noble ladies in the capital heard that the Empress herself was attending my birthday banquet, they naturally rushed to join as well. The 20 tables originally prepared were not enough, so we had to set up several more. I knew they came to the banquet out of respect for the Empress, but in this life, I have come to understand that if I can use their influence to my advantage, then everything can be turned to my benefit. Whose face I'm looking at doesn't matter. What matters is achieving the goal I want. During the banquet, Xiao Heng watched me compose poetry with noble ladies, play arrow-throwing games, and solve riddles, his gaze growing dazed without him realizing it. In my previous life, After marrying into the general's household, I was bound by its strict rules. Every day I was exhausted from dealing with my mother-in-law while also worrying about my own mother. When did I ever have such a shining moment? Suddenly, he felt that through 2 lifetimes of interaction, it was as if he was truly seeing me for the first time. In contrast, the common-born Wen Liana by her side was ignored by everyone. She didn't even know how to rhyme when composing poems, nor was she skilled at having fun, exuding an air of foolishness in every way. Seeing so many people coming to celebrate my birthday, the jealousy in her eyes was almost overflowing. She tugged at Xiao Heng's sleeve. "When my birthday comes, General, you must throw me a grand celebration too. It must be 100 times more lively than when Qingyan's." Xiao Heng responded absent-mindedly, but when no one was paying attention, he stopped me in a secluded spot. "When Qingyang, I've understood everything you wanted me to see. You went through all this trouble just to make me recognize your worth. Now I've seen it all. There is actually someone in this world so shameless that I am left speechless, only able to sneer coldly. He actually thought he had guessed correctly. I know you've been scheming to steal Liana's credit just so you can marry into my general's mansion. That day, when I called off the engagement on the street, it was just a moment of anger. I went to the trouble of inviting Her Majesty the Empress to show you that I am more capable of managing the household than Liana." As she spoke, she tried to take my hand. "I understand all your intentions, and today I will grant your wish. You and Liana entered the mansion together. Although you are both equal wives in name, in the future I will persuade Mother to entrust the household management to you. After marriage, when attending banquets, I won't be like your father. I will treat everyone fairly, ensuring both you and Liana receive equal attention." These words had already made me sick to my stomach. I took 2 steps back and said sternly, "General Xiao, although I don't know what you mean by stealing credit every time you mention it, I made it perfectly clear that day. Our engagement is off. Please have some self-respect and stop pestering me." Xiao Heng furrowed his brows tightly. "When Qingyang, there's no one here. How long are you going to keep pretending? You're just the daughter of a third-rank official. Marrying into my general's manor is a blessing you've earned over several lifetimes. Now that your mother has divorced your father, who would still choose you as their principal wife, you and Liana are sisters. What's wrong with having 2 queens in the future? Oh, I see. You're jealous that I had intimate relations with Liana first and feel I've treated you unfairly." As he spoke, he pressed forward step by step, even attempting to make improper advances. "Since today happens to be your birthday, I'll give this to you now as a birthday gift to make up for it." "All right, Tilda." His breath sprayed against my face, making me feel nauseous. The moment he leaned closer, I whispered softly, "Xiao Heng, are you sure there's no one around here?" I accidentally pushed open the door behind me, revealing a room full of noble ladies from the capital. Among them was even Xiao Heng's mother. I deliberately brought my mother to the entrance to respectfully welcome the Empress. The fact that the Empress and my mother were childhood friends didn't need to be said by me. It naturally reached the ears of all the noble ladies. The lucrative position of the third-rank Salt Transport Commissioner, compared to the Empress of China, everyone can weigh for themselves which holds more significance. I deliberately led Xiao Heng here, and fortunately, he lived up to expectations. At this moment, with tears streaming down my face like pear blossoms, I quickly hid behind the Empress and my mother. Qingyang intended to pay respects to the ladies, but who would have thought General Xiao would? This time, without the Queen needing to say a word, the ladies had already spoken up for justice. Each one sneering and mocking Xiao's mother. The princess truly knows how to raise her children well. The girl was unwilling, yet they tried to force the issue. Is bullying men and dominating women the rule of the general's household? As a general, instead of focusing on protecting the country, he thinks about having 2 women serve one husband, occupying a position without doing his duty. He shames the emperor. The princess, who had always been unwilling to lower her head in front of others, now turned pale in the face of the sarcastic remarks. She stood up and slapped Xiao Heng across the face. "You unfilial wretch. A few cups of wine have gone to your head. Hurry up and apologize to Miss Wen. In my previous life, I married into the general's household, and Mother Xiao often used her status as a mother-in-law to oppress me. But now, I am not her daughter-in-law from the general's household, and she can no longer give me even a bit of trouble. No matter how unwilling Xiao Heng felt in his heart, he could only grit his teeth and bow in apology. Miss Wen, please forgive me, it was my recklessness. I forgot that the lady has not yet married into the family. Xiao's mother, unwilling to lose too much face in front of everyone, had no choice but to grit her teeth and find a way to save face for herself. You unfilial son, come back with me now to prepare the betrothal gifts. On the wedding day, we'll properly and grandly welcome Miss Wen into our family. Any misunderstandings can be resolved later. Once you two are married, you can close the door and sort things out between yourselves. Hearing this, all the ladies couldn't help but cover their mouths and chuckle. When the mother and son were getting into the carriage, when Liana, who had already received enough disdainful looks in the courtyard, still wanted to follow them into the carriage, however, Lady Xiao, who was already in a bad mood, sharply rebuked her. Miss Liana, you and my son are not yet married. How can you ride in and out together in my general's manners carriage? You bastard-born child has no manners at all. When Liana's eyes welled up with tears, but Xiao Heng dared not defy his mother and could only persuade her to wait patiently for 2 more days. When Liana wanted to send someone to the Wen family to deliver a message and arrange for a carriage to pick her up, so she arrogantly addressed the servants. Are you all blind? I am the second young lady of the Wen family. Get the carriage ready for me now. But this is my mother's courtyard, the servant retorted with a firm yet not overly harsh tone. My young lady has already divorced Master Wen. This courtyard now belongs to the Zhong family. My lady only has Miss Qingyang as her daughter. Where did this so-called second young lady come from? Miss Wen wants to show off her authority. Go back to the Wen family to do that. A group of noble ladies eagerly watched the commotion. A mere concubine-born daughter dares to flaunt her authority in the courtyard of the divorced main wife. You have no idea how high the heavens are or how thick the earth is. Pregnant before even entering the door, shameless, amid the jeers, when Liana walked back to the Wen family, sobbing all the way with her belly protruding. As for me, it wasn't until sunset that the banquet finally ended. As night fell, my mother and I set off together in the Empress's carriage. The Empress held my hand. Qingyang, is it true that you can cure Xingzhou's leg? Jiyu Xingzhou is the 7th prince of His Majesty and the Empress's only legitimate son. A year ago, I injured my leg on the battlefield and became paralyzed. Indeed, he is the one I wish to marry in this life. That day in the palace, the Empress held my hand. Ever since you said that even if you never marry in this life, you would never yield to coercion, I knew you were a good child. If you can heal Xingzhou's leg this time and are willing to marry him, I, as the Empress Dowager, will overcome all obstacles for you. But if you cannot heal him, then let it be as if this never happened. I will adopt you as my goddaughter. With this as protection, you need not fear those scoundrels causing you harm. When I first went to see the Empress with the token, I proposed the idea of treating the 7th prince's leg. I beg your highness to grant Qingyang one request. Regardless of whether it succeeds or not, Qingyang wishes to marry the 7th prince. My mother listened with tears in her eyes, but I smiled and comforted them both. Even if it doesn't work out, would marrying the 7th prince and becoming a leisurely princess really be a disgrace to the daughter of a third-rank official? Before the 7th prince became paralyzed, he was originally the candidate for the crown prince. Such a favorable marriage would never have fallen to me. Now that he is paralyzed, he is naturally no longer the candidate for the throne, and those prominent noble families are no longer going to great lengths to marry their daughters into his household. My mother has divorced, and I must find a powerful backer who can suppress both the Xiao and Wen families. Only then will I have the chance to avenge the grievances my mother and I suffered in our previous life. Moreover, I have known Jiyu Xingzhou since childhood, and I know he is a gentleman. As a prince, he still fights for the country, and I respect him as a hero. In my previous life, after I died, I was buried with my mother in a desolate mountain, with no one to care for us. Only he, upon hearing the news, dragged his crippled leg and struggled step by step to place a few pieces of Osmanthus cake in front of my grave. In this lifetime, even if he were a cripple needing lifelong care, I've accepted it. For several days in a row, I stayed in the palace to perform acupuncture and treat illnesses, completely ignoring the rumors spreading everywhere outside. After Wen Shuren separated from his mother, unable to withstand Zheng Yinyang's persistent coaxing, He elevated her to the position of wife, when Liana, with her belly protruding, went around boasting about her upcoming marriage into the general's mansion, and Xiao Heng truly used his only military achievements to exchange for the emperor's decree. Securing a marriage contract to marry the legitimate daughter of the Wen family, he even specifically sent people to deliver the betrothal gifts and wedding attire. The emperor has decreed this marriage, Wen Qingyang can only marry me, otherwise it would be the capital offense of defying the imperial decree, and I was indeed preparing for the grand wedding, with the wedding dress my mother had embroidered stitch by stitch for me. The dowry stretched from the doorstep for several blocks. Twice as much as last time, it drew envious glances from passers-by, yet they curled their lips in disdain. No matter how wealthy the Zhong family is, it's all just to curry favor with the general's mansion by lavishing their daughter. By the time the sun rose, the front of the Xiao residence was bustling with activity. Xiao Heng, dressed in red, sat steadily at the door. He said that for the sake of fairness, both Wen Liana and I should go to the Xiao residence and enter together. Not long after, a bridal sedan chair indeed arrived at the door. Miss Wen Liana of the Wen family has arrived. People craned their necks to see behind Wen Liana, expecting the grand display of a 10-mile bridal procession, only to find just 2 carriages and a few pitiful boxes. Mother Xiao immediately frowned and questioned the Wen family's steward. Your master promised the dowry would be doubled, how could there be so little? Is he marrying off his daughter or treating her like a beggar? The steward looked utterly embarrassed. After my mother separated from the Wen family, she took all her dowry with her. It was only then that Aunt Zheng realized the Wen family was nothing but an empty shell. This meager dowry was only scraped together by Aunt Zheng turning everything upside down just to save face. Xiao Heng quickly comforted his mother. Liana has been immensely kind to me, moreover, she is pregnant. So why fuss over whether the dowry is more or less? Besides, there's still Wen Qingyang. Didn't the commoners just gossip that her dowry is twice as much as last time? Mother, please calm down, we will surely regain our honor in a moment. But the Xiao family waited and waited, until the auspicious time for entering the household had almost passed, and still my bridal sedan chair was nowhere to be seen. Xiao Heng couldn't hold back his anxiety and finally sent someone to investigate. A short while later, the servant rushed back in a panic, stumbling and falling right at the doorstep. General, something terrible has happened. The bridal sedan chair carrying the Wen family's young lady has been taken elsewhere. Ignoring Wen Liana's pleas as she stepped out of the sedan chair, Xiao Heng mounted his horse. I promised we would enter the residence together, how could I go back on my word? He spurred his horse and chased after them. Finally intercepting my bridal sedan halfway along the road, a whip lashed across the back of the leading servant. You fool, don't you even know where the general's residence is? Where are you taking the lady? He said clearly to me inside the sedan chair. Qingyang, rest assured, I promised that you and Liana would enter the mansion together, and I will definitely make it happen. I will take you home right now. As soon as he finished speaking, the sound of galloping hooves and rolling wheels could be heard not far away. General Xiao, how bold! Do you dare to snatch even my wedding? The bright yellow sedan chair landed, and when the curtain was lifted, it was Jiyu Xingzhou. Jiyu Xingzhou was 2 years younger than Xiao Heng. But when Xiao Heng was sent by his mother to serve as a study companion for the prince, he was inferior to Jiyu Xingzhou in every way. If it weren't for Jiyu Xingzhou accidentally injuring himself, Xiao Heng might not even have had the chance to earn merits on the battlefield. Though displeased, Xiao Heng still dismounted and knelt to pay his respects. Today is my joyous occasion. What does the 7th prince mean by this? Jiyu Xingzhou curled his lips and gently waved his folding fan. What a coincidence. Today is also my joyous occasion. I am to marry the daughter of my late mother's close friend, Miss Qingyang. Who is General Xiao going to marry? Upon hearing my name, Xiao Heng was greatly shocked. How is that possible? His Majesty has already issued an edict, approving my marriage to the legitimate daughter of the Wen family. How could Wen Qingyang marry 2 husbands? I heard it clearly inside the sedan chair and spoke out loudly. General Xiao himself said it. What the emperor promised you was the legitimate daughter of the Wen family. But I was expelled from the Wen family registry a few days ago, when Shuren has elevated his concubine to the principal wife, and now Wen Liana, the legitimate daughter of the Wen family, is waiting for you right at your mansion's gate, isn't she?" At that moment, Wen Liana rushed over and threw herself into Xiao Heng's arms. "General, I am now the legitimate daughter of the Wen family. And that Wen Qingyang isn't even considered a daughter of the Wen family, she's just a merchant's daughter. How could she be worthy of entering the mansion gates alongside me?" The legitimate young lady, Xiao Heng, looking utterly disheartened, pushed the person away and stumbled a few steps to my sedan chair. How could you marry someone else? Wen Qingyang, just because you're angry with me, you're treating your own marriage as a joke." He lowered his voice and said, "Do you know that Jiyu Xingzhou is a cripple?" Before he could finish, I stepped out of the sedan chair and slapped Xiao Heng across the face. "Xiao Heng, as a subject, how dare you speak recklessly about a prince? This slap is for your disrespect." Xiao Heng looked utterly astonished, and I quickly followed up with another slap. "This slap is for you talking about my husband." After 2 slaps, Xiao Heng was dazed and fell to the ground. The next moment, his eyes widened in shock. He actually saw Jiyu Xingzhou standing up from the sedan chair, each step seeming to shatter all of Xiao Heng's illusions. I must thank General Xiao for being blind, allowing this prince the chance to find such an excellent wife. Not only is her character straightforward, but her medical skills are superb, even curing this prince's leg. Jiyu Xingzhou walked to my side, looking down arrogantly at Xiao Heng. "Xiao Heng, as a subject, how dare you cause trouble at this prince's wedding? I have only been bedridden for a year, and you think you can climb over my head?" Jiyu Xingzhou tossed down 2 pills. "I heard that the miss Wen whom General Xiao is going to marry is also skilled in medicine, and she once saved General Xiao's life. Now, I shall give you 2, husband and wife. Another chance to prove your love is stronger than gold. One of these 2 pills is poisonous, the other is not. I ask you, Miss Wen, to feed one to him. Let's see if she can save your life once more." Xiao Heng looked at the 2 pills, with no right to refuse. He could only cast a pleading gaze towards Wen Liana. "Liana, my life is entirely in your hands. Come and see which one is non-toxic." When Liana looked at the 2 identical pills handed to her, her face turning pale with fear, large beads of sweat rolled down her forehead, and her voice trembled uncontrollably. This medicine is too difficult. I can't tell the difference." Xiao Heng's face instantly turned ashen. But Jiyu Xingzhou snorted with a laugh, and with a glance, the guard beside him stepped forward, casually snatched a pill, and swallowed it. Amidst Wen Liana's screams, the guard laughed and said, "Thank you, 7th Prince, for the reward of the big hawthorn pills." I said calmly, "Wen Liana, these 2 are not poison at all. It's just the most ordinary 2 hawthorn pills. You said you were the one who saved Xiao Heng that day, but you don't know the slightest bit about medicine. How could you have saved him?" When Liana still wanted to argue that she couldn't distinguish them because she was nervous at the time, but Xiao Heng, who was lightly sniffing the other pill, was already heartbroken. "Qingyang, it was you." He placed that hawthorn berry pill into his mouth, chewing it up along with his tears. "It was you who saved me back then. Back in the military camp, the medicine was bitter, so to ease the bitterness, I made large hawthorn berry pills myself. I gave him one each time after he took his medicine." If it really was Wen Liana, how could she not even recognize her own work? Xiao Heng seemed to have gone mad, beating his chest and lowering his head in despair. "I was wrong. I was so wrong. Qingyang, why didn't you tell me earlier? Why do you keep watching me make the same mistakes over and over again?" Even now, Xiao Heng still has the habit of shifting the blame for his own mistakes onto others. In my previous life, on my deathbed, I told him that it was I who saved him, but he simply didn't believe me, and now he blames me for not telling him earlier. Xiao Heng still wanted to stop Jiyu Xingzhou and me, but Jiyu Xingzhou kicked him in the chest, causing him to vomit blood. Jiyu Xingzhou picked me up in his arms. "Darling, both mothers are waiting at home. I'm here to take you home." Jiyu Xingzhou also brought my mother to the prince's residence. He didn't covet my dowry and even doubled the betrothal gifts. "All of these are for my wife." There was even a blank imperial decree. "This is from the Empress Dowager to you. In case one day I truly do something that wrongs you, you may use this imperial decree to take everything from me." I had a grand wedding with Jiyu Xingzhou, and the Xiao residence was also bustling with activity. Xiao Heng intended to break off the engagement with Wen Liana, But since the imperial decree had already been issued, if he defied it, the entire general's manor would be implicated because of him. With no other choice, he had to let Wen Liana enter the household, but only as a maidservant. The day I returned to my parents' home with Jiyu Xingzhou and my mother, we heard quite a bit of commotion along the streets. Concubine Jing, unable to become the general's mother-in-law, made a fuss again, urging Wen Shuren to find a way to bring Wen Liana back. I don't care, Liana is your daughter, how can she be just a maidservant? Go and have the general's house grant Liana a divorce at once. This time, when Shuren did not indulge her any longer, he directly ordered people to restrain her, administered a family punishment by beating, and then sent her off to the estate. It's all the disaster you raised, it's all because of you, you vixen, you've caused my family to be ruined and scattered. But before Aunt Zheng could be sent to the estate, she was thrown into prison, along with Wen Shuren, without his wife's dowry. Wen Shuren, who had long been accustomed to lavish spending, found himself in dire straits. To maintain his former dignity, he could only resort to embezzlement. Meanwhile, I had Jiyu Xingzhou send people to secretly investigate and gather evidence in advance. With a single memorial of impeachment, Wen Shuren was sentenced to immediate execution, while concubine Zheng was exiled to the frontier to serve as a military prostitute. Upon hearing the news, Wen Liana, who was at the general's residence, knelt and begged Xiao Heng to help save her mother. But ever since my grand wedding, Xiao Heng has been busy trying to clear things up with me. After being driven away several times by Jiyu Xingzhou's men, he became disheartened, spending his days drinking and indulging in pleasure-seeking. He had no mood to care about her. When Liana foolishly tried to use the child in her womb as a threat, but Xiao's mother directly sent her a dose of abortion medicine, getting rid of that lump of flesh. The legitimate wife hasn't even been married yet. How can we let a maid give birth to an illegitimate child first? Xiao's mother was still trying to find a legitimate wife for Xiao Heng everywhere. But on my birthday, which lady in the entire capital did not know of Xiao Heng's character, with a mother-in-law like Xiao's mother? No one wanted to marry their daughter into that family. After marriage, Jiyu Xingzhou and I were in perfect harmony, and soon I became pregnant. To our surprise, when Xiao Heng learned of my pregnancy, he actually started a rebellion. However, his few troops were utterly defeated by Jiyu Xingzhou in less than half a day. Not only was he himself implicated, but the entire Xiao family faced execution or conscription into the army. When Wen Liana saw her mother again, they unexpectedly met in a military brothel camp. On the day Xiao Heng was executed, he roared, "Qingyang, you must wait for me. In this new life, I will surely win you back." When Jiyu Xingzhou told me this, he kept shaking his head. "My lady, do you believe in past lives and present destinies? I am basking in the sun in the yard, gently stroking my rounded belly. Even if there were, such scum doesn't deserve another chance." Jiyu Xingzhou planted a kiss on my lips. Of course, in this life, the next life, and for all eternity, I would never give him the chance to take my wife away. Not far away, mother called us both to eat, and Jiyu Xingzhou's face instantly flushed with embarrassment. It made me laugh uncontrollably. Whether Xiao Heng can be reborn again, I don't know, but I know, no matter how many times he is reborn, I will make sure he gets the punishment he deserves. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. After leaving the capital, the first old acquaintance I met was Xiao Yanchen. That day, with heavy snow falling, he stepped into my small pastry shop to buy a box of hibiscus cakes for his pregnant wife at home. Meeting an old friend again, we were both taken aback. After a moment of looking at each other, we finally exchanged greetings. He asked me how I started the business of selling lotus seed pastry, and I said it was because I like it. He took the pastry but did not turn to leave, hesitating right where he stood. Outside the shop, the snow fell silently. I thought he was waiting for the snow to lighten, but then I heard him ask in a low voice, "Xie Yuan, do you still hate me?" I looked up at him, just smiled, and didn't answer. How could I not hate him? But 5 years have passed in a flash. And all that hatred has long since faded with time, along with all my other feelings for Xiao Yanchen, too. His lips moved slightly, as if he wanted to ask something more, but just then, Another customer happened to enter the shop. Seeing this, Xiao Yanchen had no choice but to swallow his words and quietly step aside. The customer was a regular patron and selected several types of pastries. "Boss lady, your skills are truly impressive. The taste of these pastries is no less than those from the famous shops in the capital." "You flatter me," I replied calmly while deftly packing his order. The customer glanced around my small shop again and asked with some confusion, "With such excellent skills, why don't you open a larger shop? It's a pity to be tucked away in this small place." I just smiled without responding. The customer understood the boundaries and didn't ask further. After paying, they left with the pastries. Xiao Yanchen remained standing in the corner, his gaze fixed on me, several times seeming on the verge of speaking but holding back. The shop was bustling with a continuous stream of customers, one wave after another, and he never found the right moment to speak. He remained silent, and I simply acted as if he weren't there, focusing entirely on attending to the customers, until the cautious voice of his attendant came from outside. "My lord, the lady has sent someone to ask if the pastries have been bought. The roads are slippery in the snow, and she is a bit worried." "Understood." Xiao Yanchen slightly furrowed his brows and glanced outside. Outside the shop, the curtain of his family's carriage was slightly lifted, and a figure, supported by a maid, could vaguely be seen peering inside. Before leaving, he looked at me and said, "If you ever need any help in the future, you can come to me." After leaving these words, he eventually turned around and walked out quickly. I only took it as a casual polite remark and didn't pay much attention. Through the gap in the half-drawn door curtain, I saw him walk to the carriage, carefully support the woman with a prominent belly, gently adjust her cloak for her, and only then did he help her into the carriage together. I withdrew my gaze and continued to neatly arrange the freshly baked pastries. The next day, I woke up as soon as the sky began to lighten. Today is the anniversary of my father's passing. I made a special trip to the market to buy a good number of things. Although they aren't proper offerings, my father always liked these when he was alive. I suppose, after all, the ceremony is for the departed, so it's best to follow their wishes. Arriving at the gravesite, kneeling on the cold bluestone slab, I carefully arranged the pastries one by one and whispered to the tombstone as usual. I mentioned that the shop's business has been quite good lately, and the newly developed Osman Thus cakes are very popular with the neighbors. I also said that the other day, Granny Lee's little grandson came to buy crispy cakes, and he was absolutely adorable. Although this winter is cold, we have prepared enough charcoal, so the nights are not difficult to endure. As he spoke, his voice gradually faded, the mountain breeze brushed past my hair, and I reached out to gently stroke the deeply engraved name on the stone tablet. As if seeing my father's loving gaze once again, "Dad," I said softly, a faint smile spreading at the corner of my lips, "you see, I've been listening to you, trying my best to live well. Now I'm living very well, truly very well. Now, I am just the owner of the pastry shop at the corner of South Street, living a simple and steady life. No longer the lawful wife who was cast aside like a worn-out shoe by the Marquis of Junbei, Xiao Yanchen, with a single letter of divorce. No longer that paranoid woman who grew suspicious over him and spent her days in tears. He is no longer the criminal who was thrown into the heavenly prison for murder and arson. The only stain on his illustrious career, Xiao Yanchen and I can be considered childhood sweethearts who weathered hardships together. The year we first met, he was only 15. Still an inconspicuous illegitimate son in the general's mansion. His existence was solely to shield his legitimate elder brother from disasters and dangers. Whenever there were open attacks or hidden schemes, he would step forward to protect him with his own body. Thus, his body was always covered with new wounds layered over old ones, never a day without injury. Seeing his pitiful state, his father often secretly provided him with assistance. "Your great kindness, I, Xiao Yanchen, will remember for life and will surely repay it in the future." Xiao Yanchen was a person who deeply understood the importance of repaying kindness. He truly accomplished it. In 3 years, he led his iron cavalry straight to the northern Di royal court, reclaiming 300 li of lost territory. He was enfeoffed by His Majesty as the Marquis who pacifies the north. With a hereditary title, for a time, his power overshadowed the entire court, and his influence was unmatched. Once The high officials and nobles who had looked down on him began to court his favor, but he only responded politely and never truly formed connections with them. Only toward my father did he hold genuine respect from the bottom of his heart. Even after my father retired and returned to his hometown, leaving the capital, his feelings never changed. If it weren't for your timely help back then, I would have died long ago and would never have achieved the glory I have today. From now on, I will regard you as my own father. I will definitely be filial to you and take good care of Xie Yuan. During that time, we often met, and our feelings developed naturally. After we got married, the legitimate-born brothers in his household were very dissatisfied with him. The Marquis born of a concubine, and repeatedly challenged him both openly and covertly. During those 5 years, I stayed by his side through countless sleepless nights, shielding him from poisoned wine and bandaging his wounds from assassinations late at night. From the scheming in the inner chambers to the verbal battles in the imperial court, we walked together through the most perilous path, until every member of the Xiao family dared not make any further moves. The higher his status, the more women throwing themselves at him seemed to appear endlessly. Although I trusted him, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. He noticed my unease, and one night, holding my hand tightly, he said, "Don't overthink it, Yuan. No one can compare to you. You are the one who has endured hardships and dangers with me, walking through the shadow of swords together. This bond is irreplaceable by anyone." To put my mind at ease, aside from attending court and handling official duties, he spent almost all his remaining time with me. He knew I loved the pastries from the southern part of the city, so no matter how late he finished court, he would personally go buy them for me. If I ever accidentally pricked my finger while embroidering, he would frown for half a day at the sight, carefully applying medicine and bandaging it as if it were some serious injury. Over time, the entire capital came to know that Xiao Yanchen, the Marquis of Zhunbei, cherished his wife as his own life, valuing me more than himself. I thought that as a young couple who had weathered hardships together, no one could compare to the bond we shared. Yet I never knew that all this so-called affection was merely a carefully calculated move by Xiao Yanchen. The day I discovered the clue was just like today, a day of heavy snowfall. Watching the snow falling harder and harder outside the window, I remembered that he had only worn a thin fur coat when he went out. Feeling uneasy, I took a cloak and went out to look for him. Then, I witnessed a scene I would never forget for the rest of my life. Xiao Yanchen was entangled with a strange woman, their clothes in disarray. In an instant, I felt as if I had been frozen, standing rigidly in place, unable to utter a single word. Helplessness, confusion, betrayal, all these emotions poured over me like icy water. Xiao Yanchen, however, remained unusually calm. "I had planned to tell you in a few days, but since you've already seen it, that's fine too. I want to marry Yua as a secondary wife," he said it so matter-of-factly, as if it were as ordinary as deciding what to eat tomorrow morning. I should have agreed. In this world, it's perfectly normal for men to have multiple wives and concubines. Even my father has several concubines. With a status like Xiao Yanchen's, taking a concubine was only a matter of time. So I suppressed my anger and tried to remain rational, saying, "You can take a concubine, but not a second wife of equal status." I thought that, given the nearly 10 years of trials we had been through together, he would at least consider my feelings, but he refused. "It must be a co-wife. I want to give you a proper status." He said it with absolute determination. At that moment, my anger overwhelmed my reason. I frantically rushed forward, pounding on him, my voice hoarse as I demanded to know where he had left my dignity, questioning whether our 10 years of affection couldn't compare to some woman of unknown origin. Xiao Yanchen simply stood there calmly, letting me vent. It wasn't until I started hurling indiscriminate insults, calling them a scumbag and a cheap woman, that his expression changed. "Enough, Yua isn't just some random woman, she's the only person I've ever wanted to marry." "Is she the only one you want to marry? Then what about me?" His gaze fell on my pale face, still calm. "Xie Yuan, you are the most suitable choice after weighing the pros and cons." Back then, I was surrounded by dangers and couldn't bear to let Yua take the risk. So I needed a wife to stand in the open. "All the affection I've given you over the years was just to make this facade more convincing." This sentence was like a knife, instantly piercing the belief I had held onto for years. It turns out that so-called sharing hardships together was just an elaborately designed deception. It turns out all that tenderness and consideration was merely a performance for the enemy in the shadows. It turns out the marriage I thought was perfect had, from beginning to end, been a shield for another woman. I was still standing there, trying to digest the truth. While Xiao Yanchen had already escorted Zhao Yu away, he meant what he said. He said he would marry Zhao Yu as his equal wife, and he truly began preparing for it on a grand scale. He took her to all the important occasions in the capital, making sure everyone knew her, paving the way and building momentum for her in a manner even more exaggerated and unrestrained than when he had doted on me. They are affectionate and intimate in public. They are first loves who have reunited, a fairytale couple who ended up together after achieving success and fame. What about me? All these years of effort, all these years of feelings, are they just going to be erased so easily? Am I supposed to hide in the shadows, watching them bask in their glory and sweetness? I refuse to accept this. If I suffer 10 parts of pain, they must endure at least 5. So, on the day Xiao Yanchen brought Zhao Yu to the princess's banquet, I went as well. In front of all the guests, I completely tore off all pretense and exposed their disgraceful affairs for everyone to know. Amidst the mess of cups and plates, Xiao Yanchen pulled me aside, his eyes filled with exhaustion and impatience. Do you have to make such a scene, disturbing everyone's peace? Yes, I retorted, lifting my head to meet his gaze without yielding an inch. If I'm miserable, none of you will have an easy time either. But this wasn't enough. I used all the connections my father had left in the court to jointly submit a memorial, impeaching Xiao Yanchen for his past shady dealings. I want to pull him down from the clouds and make him return to being that destitute common-born son. However, reality soon dealt me a heavy blow. He is a trusted confidant of His Majesty. And those memorials sank like stones into the sea. Instead, we who submitted the petition were accused of slandering important court officials. Those who had submitted the petition grew fearful and shifted all the blame onto me. I was thrown into the imperial prison. On the day I was imprisoned, Xiao Yanchen came to see me. The prison was dimly lit. He stood outside the bars, impeccably dressed, his tone calm yet icy. Yuan, you cannot bring me down. The person I am today is no longer the person I was in the past. He paused, as if with a hint of pity. As long as you admit your mistakes and promise not to trouble Yua anymore, you will still be my lawful wife, and everything will remain as it was. For the sake of our past affection, I will surely not treat you unfairly. I just sneered coldly. Back then, young and hot-headed, I believed dignity was more important than life itself. I pointed at his nose and cursed him, preferring death over bowing my head. Perhaps my words wounded him, or perhaps he truly intended to teach me a lesson. The dozen or so days in the imperial prison were far more unbearable than I had imagined. The damp, putrid environment, the cold shackles, and the stale, hard food nearly shattered my will completely. Just as I was on the verge of breaking down, he suddenly ordered someone to take me out. It seemed as if nothing had changed, but everyone looked at me strangely. Only later did I find out. When my father heard that I had been imprisoned, he rushed from our hometown to the capital overnight and knelt outside the court to plead for mercy on my behalf. After receiving no response for a long time, he ultimately dashed his head against the stone steps in front of the hall. In the most tragic way, he exchanged his life for a sliver of the emperor's pity, and in doing so, gave me a chance to survive. This news instantly drained all the spirit from me. I stopped making a fuss and no longer concerned myself with anything related to Xiao Yanchen or Zhao Yu. All day long, I curled up in my room like a puppet whose soul had been hollowed out, drowning in the immense grief of having caused my father's death through my reckless and willful behavior. Yet, throughout the Marquis's estate, preparations were in full swing for Xiao Yanchen's upcoming marriage to Zhao Yu, with festive decorations and an atmosphere of joyous celebration. Only my courtyard remained as silent and still as a tomb. I drifted in and out of a dazed slumber for who knows how long, and when I awoke, I saw many people. They say I am pregnant. I still have no reaction. Perhaps out of guilt, Xiao Yanchen personally took care of me for a few days. But this bit of warmth quickly faded, and he returned to Zhao Yu's side. On their wedding day, the entire mansion was bustling with noise. I had no interest in going to see it, but Zhao Yu came to my room. Perhaps she wanted to provoke me, so she told me the truth about my father's death. She said, "Your father didn't have to die, it's just that I thought you were too immature and needed to learn a lesson. So I had Yanchen prevent your father from seeing the emperor, with no other choice. Your father had to use his old life to seize a chance to meet the sovereign." Zhao Yu truly provoked me. Her words were like the final straw that broke the last of my sanity. In a daze, I set the bed curtains on fire. The fire spread instantly, devouring everything. Zhao Yu panicked and tried to run, but I held her tightly, with only one insane thought in my heart: let's die together. The moment Xiao Yanchen rushed into the sea of flames, the thick smoke blurred my vision. I couldn't see his expression clearly, only that he picked up the screaming Zhao Yu without hesitation, turned around, and rushed out. The burning beam collapsed with a crash at that moment, heavily landing on my leg. In the excruciating pain, I felt a warm flow gushing from beneath me. The child I had never paid much attention to was gone. Just like that, my leg bone was broken, the child was lost, and the last bit of my will to live had vanished. But I still didn't die. The fire was brought under control, and I was rescued. But everyone says I've gone mad, yet I know perfectly well that I haven't lost my mind. I just stabbed Xiao Yanchen with a knife when he came to see me. You should know, my father paid with his life. They said that assassinating a high-ranking court official is an even more serious crime. I was sent back to the imperial prison. This time, what awaited me was formal interrogation and sentencing. For the assassination of a court-appointed official, I was sentenced to 3 years. Subsequently, a letter of divorce was also delivered to me. Xiao Yanchen finally had his wish fulfilled, completely divorcing me and elevating Zhao Yu to the official position. In prison, I often felt mentally dazed and muddled through my days, until an old subordinate of my father brought a handwritten letter left by him. The letter contained only a few words: "Yuan Yuan, no matter what, live well." Seeing my father's familiar handwriting, my withered heart seemed to be infused with a glimmer of light. For my father's final wish, I began to eat well, rest well, and live well. It happened to be the emperor's birthday, and a general amnesty was declared. I was able to be released from prison early. With a meager sum of money, I went to my father's hometown and opened a small pastry shop. Life was hard, but I remembered my father's words and struggled to survive. I lived until I could find a way to avenge him, until I could see with my own eyes the day Xiao Yanchen and Zhao Yu, who caused his death, go to hell. My thoughts drifted away from the heavy memories as the mountain breeze brushed by, carrying a chill. I smiled at the tombstone once more and said softly, "Dad, I'm leaving now, I'll come see you again next time." Picking up the empty bamboo basket, I turned and limped my way back down the mountain path. But I had only taken a few steps when an inexplicable unease gripped me, and as if compelled by some unseen force, I turned to look back. Under the old tree at the entrance of the cemetery, Xiao Yanchen stood silently, watching me. I had no idea how long he had been there. "Xie Yuan," seeing that I had noticed him, Xiao Yanchen quickly strode toward me. The mountain path was slippery after the snow, yet his steps were swift and steady. Only on his usually calm face, I noticed a faint, almost imperceptible weariness and tension. We stood a few steps apart, neither of us speaking first. The mountain wind swept through the withered branches, carrying the scent of lingering snow and emitting a mournful sound, making the cemetery feel even more desolate. He lowered his gaze, his eyes falling on the empty basket I was carrying, then slowly shifting to my slightly limping leg. His Adam's apple moved slightly. "I'll walk you back." He finally broke the silence, his voice slightly hoarse. Without waiting for my response, he reached out and took the bamboo basket from my arm. The gesture was natural, carrying an air of unquestionable authority. I didn't refuse, only turned silently and began limping along the path down the mountain. He walked half a step behind me, his pace deliberately slow to match mine. The snow on the stone path had been swept to both sides, but the remaining ice shards still made walking somewhat difficult. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the faint sound of compacted snow beneath our feet. "Your leg?" he finally couldn't resist asking, his tone carrying a hint of caution. "How is it now?" My gaze fixed on the winding mountain road ahead, my tone as calm as if I were talking about someone else's affairs. "It's all right. But in truth, it was far from all right. Back then, when the roof beam fell and shattered my leg, and I couldn't receive proper medical treatment in prison, it was already a miracle that I managed to survive. In those early days, the excruciating pain was relentless, day and night. Even the slightest movement felt like a stabbing agony, let alone trying to stand. It was by clinging to my father's last words, "Live well," that I gradually endured, relying on a sliver of willpower and rough self-rehabilitation, from being bedridden to leaning against the wall to stand, and then to moving with difficulty using a stick. Even now, though I am left with a permanent limp, at least I can walk on my own and manage the shop. It is already an extra mercy from heaven. But there is no need to tell him any of this. He seemed to detect a sense of distance in my overly brief response. His lips tightened, and he fell silent, though the hand holding the bamboo basket turned slightly pale at the knuckles. Not a word was spoken along the way. He followed me in silence all the way to the door of my pastry shop, tucked away at the end of the alley in the southern part of the city. I stopped, turned around, and took the bamboo basket from his hand. "We're here." Yet he did not leave immediately, merely standing in place, his gaze heavy as he looked at me, or perhaps through me, at something even he could not clearly see. The old paint on the shop's door panels gleamed dully under the thin winter sunlight, while the small sign hanging under the eaves swayed gently in the wind. "You should go back now," I spoke up, breaking the uncomfortable stillness. "Lord Xiao." This address made his eyes dim slightly. I continued speaking in that flat, unemotional tone. "Now you have achieved your wish, successfully married the one you love, and are about to become a father, your life can be considered complete." I didn't finish my sentence, because he suddenly interrupted me. "Xie Yuan," he called my name, his eyes swirling with complex emotions I couldn't understand, as if he had struggled for a long time before finally uttering those words that perhaps even he himself hadn't anticipated. I seemed to regret it a little. After that day, Xiao Yanchen started visiting frequently. At first, he would come every few days to buy a box of hibiscus cakes. Later, he set aside his marquis status and even learned from the shop assistants, helping me sweep the floor, organize the shelves, and even standing behind the counter to greet customers. He was handsome, and even in casual clothes, his dignified presence was unmistakable. Just standing there made my small cake shop feel honored. He did these things very naturally. Whether moving sacks of flour or neatly arranging freshly baked pastries, though his movements weren't particularly skilled, they carried a strange kind of focus. Some regular customers who knew us couldn't resist teasing, "Boss lady, have you found your ideal husband? You two look so well matched." Hearing this, my hands paused for a moment. Just as I was about to explain, I saw Xiao Yanchen simply smile. Not only did he not refute, but sometimes he would even add a word or two along with the guest's remarks, such as "Thank you for your kind words" or "She's skilled," and I get to share in the glory, which made the guests laugh even more heartily. In that moment, their expressions and demeanor were so convincing that it almost seemed as if they were an ordinary couple, running a small shop and living a peaceful, uneventful life. After the last customer left, he would help me clean up both inside and outside the shop. As dusk fell, only the two of us remained in the room, along with the lingering sweet fragrance in the air. At that moment, while wiping the counter, he spoke to me intermittently, telling me about those 5 years. He said that in the first year, he finally married Zhao Yu, feeling as if he had achieved his heart's desire. Their life was as sweet as honey, and he believed it was the fulfillment he had fought for with everything he had. In the second year, Zhao Yu began to grow suspicious and paranoid. She was well aware of how he had been taken from me, so she constantly worried that another Zhao Yu would appear. She restricted his movements, interfered with his social interactions, and wove a web of tenderness and tears to tightly entangle him. He felt an unprecedented sense of confinement. The high walls and deep courtyards of the Marquis's estate were more suffocating than the glint of swords and shadows of battle on the battlefield. By the third year, he gradually realized that Zhao Yu was not presentable. It wasn't about her appearance or talents, but in the official banquets and aristocratic interactions he had to navigate, he found he had nothing to say to Zhao Yu. He spoke of the hardships and dangers of court affairs. While she only understood the petty intrigues of the inner household, he occasionally expressed his feelings, but she couldn't grasp even a hint of his sentiments. It was only then that he realized some forms of are ingrained in one's very bones, and once lost, they are nearly impossible to find again. In the 4th year, he began to think of me uncontrollably. He recalled those nights we spent talking by candlelight, the understanding in my eyes no matter what he said. And every step we took together through thorns and hardships. He began to miss the feeling of having a confidant. While Zhao Yu ultimately became an outsider, in the 5th year, arguments became frequent. Zhao Yu was sensitive to his growing indifference and grew increasingly anxious due to the never-ending rumors in the capital. Although the scene I caused at the Grand Princess's banquet was forcefully suppressed, there are no walls that wind cannot pass through. The tragic death of my father and the years of imprisonment endured by his lawful wife have become undeniable proof of Xiao Yanchen's ingratitude and cruelty. Though His Majesty did not speak openly, his gaze gradually grew cold. How much loyalty and patriotism could a man possess, who drove his own father-in-law, the very man who had saved his life, to his death and treated his lawful wife with such ruthlessness, with the emperor's favor waning and grace fading? His position as the Marquis of Zhunbei became as precarious as walking on thin ice, and all of this became the root of their arguments. It wasn't until Zhao Yu was diagnosed with pregnancy that those sharp conflicts were temporarily suppressed, maintaining a fragile surface calm. As he said this, his tone was very calm, as if he were telling someone else's story. Most of the time, I just listened, wiping pastries or calculating accounts in my hands, without interrupting or commenting. Finally, he would smile self-deprecatingly and look at me. "Why am I telling you all this? It's just needlessly troubling you." By this time, the sky outside would usually have completely darkened. He would stand up, straighten his robes, and say, "It's getting late. I will come again another day." I nodded, watching his tall figure blend into the night at the end of the alley, then calmly closed the shop door and slid the bolt shut, shutting out the lingering traces of his presence inside. Along with his belated regrets and confessions, the next day, not long after the shop had opened, an unexpected visitor arrived. Zhao Yu had come. She was dressed in elaborate and luxurious brocade fur robes, adorned with pearls and jade, and surrounded by a crowd of matrons and maids as she stepped into my small pastry shop. The shop instantly felt cramped, and the sweet, cloying aroma in the air seemed to be overpowered by the strong scent of incense she carried. She rested a hand on her waist, her belly noticeably swollen, and her gaze swept over my face and my lame leg with undisguised scrutiny and a hint of condescending pity. "Sister Xie Yuan," she began, her voice delicate yet laced with sharpness, "it's been a long time. You've certainly found a quiet place to settle down." I was neatly arranging the freshly steamed date cakes and, without looking up, replied calmly, "Madam Hu, what an honor to have you visit. What pastries would you like to buy?" She didn't respond to my question and instead continued on her own. "This place is so remote and shabby. Sister, why must you suffer like this? Yang Chen is kind-hearted and occasionally visits out of old sentiments, but please don't misunderstand and bring unnecessary troubles upon yourself. How about, I offer you a sum of money, you could find a better place to settle down and live peacefully, and avoid causing gossip." Only then did I look up at her. Her face wore a flawless, gentle smile. But her eyes were filled with caution and calculation. If our positions were reversed, she would still be the kind of woman who relies on numerous servants and the power of the Marquis household to feel secure. As for me, even standing alone in this confined space, my heart remains steady. There's no need for the Marquis' wife to trouble herself. I am quite content here. As for idle gossip, I paused, my gaze sweeping over the entourage she had brought with her, with such a grand display. "I'm afraid you are the one more likely to attract gossip." Zhao Yu's expression changed slightly, and she was about to speak again when the shop door was abruptly pushed open. Xiao Yanchen strode in, bringing a gust of cold air with him. He had clearly rushed over after receiving the news, his face ashen with anger. His gaze first fell on me, and seeing that I was unharmed, he turned to Zhao Yu, his voice barely suppressing his fury. "What are you doing here?" When Zhao Yu saw him, she was first startled, then a wave of grievance washed over her, and her eyes instantly reddened. "Yanchen, I just heard that you often come to this remote place, and I was worried about you. I only came to see my sister." Xiao Yanchen sneered coldly. You've seen her, now you can go back. You, Zhao Yu, being publicly scolded by him, felt embarrassed and her voice grew shrill. I said, why did you have to come to this godforsaken place? Did you already know she was here? So you rushed over to reminisce about old times. Don't forget, I am your lawfully wedded wife. Enough, Xiao Yanchen sharply cut her off, his gaze icy cold. My affairs are none of your business. Go back. He no longer looked at her, turning instead to me, his tone carrying a barely perceptible difficulty. I'm sorry. I promise she won't appear in front of you again. I nodded without saying a word. He almost forcibly, along with the struggling and crying Zhao Yu and her group, quickly left my shop. From that day on, Zhao Yu indeed never appeared again. Some time later, news spread through the streets that the Marquis of Zhunbei's residence had urgently summoned the imperial physician in the middle of the night, causing a great commotion. It turned out that the Marquis's wife had a difficult labor, struggling through the entire night, and in the end, gave birth to a stillborn child. When the news reached my small shop, the customers buying pastries sighed a few words of sympathy, and then it was over. I saw Xiao Yanchen again a few nights later. He arrived reeking heavily of alcohol. Unlike his usual self who would help out, he just sat silently on a stool in the corner, watching me knead the dough, prepare the filling, and place the pastries into the steamer. In the misty haze, his outline was somewhat blurred. This time, he was heavily drunk and didn't ramble on as he usually did, eventually slumping over the table and falling asleep. I didn't call out to him or move him, just continued with what I was doing. It wasn't until the first light of dawn that he woke up, his gaze still somewhat dazed. He looked at me for a moment, said nothing, and staggered to his feet before leaving. However, in less time than it takes for an incense stick to burn, he returned. His expression was flustered. The look of a hangover completely gone from his face, replaced only by sheer tension and scrutiny as he stared intently at me. Xie Yuan, have you seen my military tally that I always carry with me? I stopped what I was doing, looked up at him, and calmly shook my head. His brow was furrowed, his gaze sharp as it swept across my face and then over the small, sparsely furnished shop. Given his suspicious nature, the next step would likely be to demand to search my shop. His lips moved slightly, as if the words were already on the tip of his tongue, but in the end, he did not take that step. He took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the anxiety and suspicion in his eyes, and said in a deep voice, since there isn't, then I'll go look elsewhere. He turned to leave but stopped again, his back to me, his voice carrying a barely noticeable tension. If you ever see it in the future, remember, be sure to notify me. I remained calm and nodded. Only then did he stride away, his figure quickly disappearing into the thin morning mist. I stood behind the counter, listening to the sound of his footsteps fading into the distance until they could no longer be heard. Only then did I slowly lower my gaze and continue wiping the mirror-smooth surface of the table. The news from the capital was like a massive rock thrown into stagnant water, stirring up 1,000 ripples. Zhao Yu, the wife of the Marquis of Zhunbei who had been missing for days, was found kneeling outside the palace gates in plain mourning attire, beating a drum to voice her grievances. She accused her husband, Xiao Yanchen, of conspiring to commit treason by colluding with the enemy, and claimed with certainty that his personal military tally had long gone missing. The emperor was enraged and personally summoned Xiao Yanchen, demanding to inspect the military tally in court. Under the watchful eyes of all, Xiao Yanchen could not produce the token used to command troops. The charge of colluding with the enemy was nearly confirmed by the missing military tally and the testimony of his devoted wife. The emperor was enraged and issued an edict stripping Xiao Yanchen of all his titles and official positions, convicting him of the grave crime of colluding with the enemy. He was sentenced to public execution at the vegetable market 3 days later. As for Zhao Yu, she prided herself on having reported the crime and pleaded with the emperor for leniency. Little did she know that the emperor's mind abhorred those who were fickle and schemed against their own husbands. An imperial decree was issued, condemning her as complicit with her husband and branding her a rebel. She was ultimately convicted of plotting treason, and her entire clan was sentenced to extermination. Zhao Yu and her family were escorted together to the execution ground. On the execution ground, Zhao Yu, with disheveled hair and none of her former grace, cried out her innocence. Struggling, she turned her gaze toward Xiao Yanchen, who stood beside her wearing heavy shackles, and screamed hoarsely, Yanchen, Yanchen, save me, for the sake of our child. Upon hearing this, Xiao Yanchen actually let out a low chuckle. He turned to look at Zhao Yu, his eyes filled with a deathly calm and a hint of mockery. Save you, Zhao Yu, isn't all of this brought upon by your own actions? Upon hearing this, Zhao Yu collapsed completely to the ground, his face ashen. On the day of the execution, the sky was overcast. I went to the execution ground, standing at the edge of the crowd from a distance. He knelt on the execution platform, his crown fallen, his dark hair disheveled, his prisoner's clothes stained with dust, yet his back remained straight. The executioner's ghost head blade gleamed coldly in his hand. He seemed to sense something, lifted his head, and his gaze swept through the crowd, finally settling on me, across the noisy crowd. Across the distance between life and death, he quietly looked at me, her lips parted slightly without making a sound, but I understood. The shape of her mouth clearly formed the words, I'm sorry. I stood where I was, my face devoid of joy or sorrow, as if watching a play that had nothing to do with me. The blade fell, and blood splattered across the execution platform. The once powerful Marquis of the North, who had dominated the court, ultimately met a gruesome end, his head severed from his body. Zhao Yu's cries abruptly ceased. I did not watch any longer, turning away and leaving behind the clamor filled with the stench of blood. The next day, I brought freshly made hibiscus cakes and a few other snacks that my father had loved while he was alive, and went up the mountain again. The area in front of the grave was still quiet and undisturbed. I carefully arranged the snacks one by one and said softly, Father, the person who killed you is already dead. The mountain breeze brushed by. The gentle rustling of the pine trees sounding like a father's sigh, or perhaps a murmur of contentment. I went on and on about some trivial matters from the shop, mentioning how diligent the new apprentice was, and how Granny Wang from the corner of the street had given me some of her homemade pickles. Finally, I fell silent for a moment, my fingertips lightly brushing the cold tombstone as my voice grew even softer. Don't worry, I'll be fine, I'll listen to you and live well. Those who harmed my father are dead, and the nightmare that has haunted me for years seems to have finally lifted. After paying my respects, I carried the empty basket and slowly made my way down the mountain, returning to my small pastry shop. Everything was as it had always been. The steamers were billowing with heat, filling the air with a sweet aroma, as if the bloodshed and turmoil of the capital had never touched this quiet corner. As for that military tally that caused such a great disaster, not long after Xiao Yanchen frantically searched for it that morning, I had already entrusted my father's trusted former subordinate to find a safe opportunity to quietly return it to the emperor's desk. From then on, the conflicts, grievances, immense power, and life and death partings of the capital had nothing more to do with me. I am just a proprietress, quietly living my life while running a pastry shop at the corner of South Street. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.